Good afternoon, everyone. I want to call the Public Service and Employer Subcommittee to order. We're official. Madam Secretary, please take the roll.
Representative Alexander, Dixie, Eldridge, Johnson, Kiesling, Powers.
Here.
Chair Lady, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Do we have any personal orders or recognitions from our members today? Seeing none. We'll now take up our regular calendar. I want to tell everyone that item 1, House Bill 72, has been rolled for 2 weeks.
Sorry, it's House Bill 71.
71? It says 72. Said 72. That was not my mistake.
Nope.
Okay. Next up.
No, just make sure you say House Bill 71 has been rolled 2 weeks.
House Bill 71 has been rolled for two weeks. Okay. Next up, we're going to go out of order, and we are going to take up item number 4, House Bill 17. Chairman Faison, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I love your sweater,
Thank
more.
you. Thank you.
Beautiful. Everything is working so perfect, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. That will not get your bill passed.
The rest of y'all look wonderful too. Members of the committee, thank you for indulgence. Thank you for taking me out of order. Alzheimer's has impacted my life, my family's life. I dare say many of you on this committee have dealt with Alzheimer's and somebody who could potentially go missing. If you remember a few years ago, y'all, with your help, we passed the Silver Alert bill. We have saved hundreds and hundreds of Tennesseans with that bill. And with y'all's indulgence, we will turn the month of May into the Silver Alert month to bring more awareness to what we're doing. And I encourage you to sign on to this bill if you vote for it.
You've heard the explanations. Do we have any comments or any questions from our members? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. Ayes have it. Your bill passes on to full
Thank
committee.
you, committee.
Next, we're going to item number 2, which is House Bill 522 by Chairman Russell. You have a motion and a second, and you're recognized on your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Lady, and Committee. It's a pretty simple bill. And if the Tennessee Highway Patrol is and an officer of a local law enforcement agency to utilize their respective agency's vehicle or emergency equipment for the purpose of conducting the protective detail.
Thank you, Chairman Russell. I think we have someone here that wants to testify. We're going to go out of session. Tennessee Highway Patrol, Matt Perry and Elizabeth Stroker with the Department of Safety. Please come up. And identify yourself and your departments.
Yes, ma'am. I'm Colonel Matt Perry with the Tennessee Highway Patrol. Thank you, Chairman Committee, for allowing me to attend. So I want to first say, you know, there's not a lot of bigger supporters of the Tennessee Highway Patrol than a retired Sergeant and Representative Russell. So I know this bill has great intention. His heart and head are in the right place. I don't know that I think the bill, the TCA that already is in Vanessa K. Free already covers probably what Representative Russell's trying to get in this bill. I want to be careful not to have a bill that makes it a little bit easier for troopers to run lights and sirens, do things that endanger themselves and potentially the public. So I think, like I said, and of course I'm no lawyer or legal scholar, but I think the TCA currently covers what an executive protection trooper does on a daily basis, and that's really all I have to say.
Do I have any questions from our members for our guest? You're recognized, Representative Dixie.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And then this may be, I don't know if it's to address you or the sponsor, but when would a situation occur that this would need to happen? Or has it occurred?
I don't want to jump in front of the representative. Should
Is
I
your
answer it
question
first?
for?
Yeah, I wasn't
Okay,
sure
I'm
if
sorry.
it was for you or if it was who would be best to answer it. I'm not sure if
I
you
can definitely answer it.
Okay.
Yes, sir. No. So anytime they are taking a dignitary to or from a function that is a work-related job function, some of those are, we've got to get to a committee meeting quickly. We've got to get to the Capitol for, a bill or something of that nature. That's when they have the ability to, with restrictions, to go against the rules of the road, so they can turn their lights and sirens on, run through traffic lights, stop signs, go down the shoulder if they need to, but they have to do it in a safe, and the current TCA requires them to do it in a safe manner, not to create any harm to the public or themselves. So they can't just run as fast as they want or run through every, and this applies to troopers that are in pursuit or running to a crash scene. They have to slow down, even if they have a green light. If they're running lights and sirens, they have to ensure that the intersection's clear before they cross it. We hold ourselves to a pretty high standard already. I think we're probably a little more restrictive now because we don't want troopers. They drive for a living. Police officers drive for a living, and they're more likely to get in a crash because of how many miles they put. So when you start getting higher speeds, going through intersections, emotions are high, tension. So we try to make sure troopers go above and beyond what current TCA says. So I would say the same but those are some of the instances. And I should have said the supervision, we reached out to the supervision of our executive protection unit. They think the current TCA covers what they need to do. Thank you.
Chairman Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to ask, what is the difference between, you were just talking about the current code, what's the difference between what the current code is and the bill that's being presented today? Can you just kind of define what that would do?
Yes, sir. I can define how I read it in my conversations with Representative. I think it's intended to sort of tighten up to make sure there's not a place where a trooper can be held liable. But so and it reads a little bit like it allows them to run lights and sirens when almost any time they have a dignitary, and that's not the case. We don't feel they should. That's the best, my interpretation. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out how I can support you and support him too. I don't know because we want to support the Highway Patrol, and so we're just trying to figure out exactly what the difference might be and if that would be allowable.
Yes, sir. And I appreciate that. I want to support Representative Russell as well and the Highway Patrol. I just think we're covered where we're at, but I'm no legal scholar, so but we look at it like the youngest, most experienced, because our executive protection, we have a specific team unit. Y'all know them. You've seen some of them with the governor and speaker and lieutenant governor. Right. But we also have troopers in every district of the Highway Patrol that are trained, but they don't do it as an everyday function of their job. But when the governor or someone comes to Memphis or Fall Branch, Knoxville, those members then take up some of that responsibility, and we just want to make sure that we're still pretty restrictive and strict on what a trooper can do, even with the dignitary in the vehicle.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Do we have any more questions for Colonel Perry? Seeing none, we thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We'll go back into session. Chairman Russell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Lady and Committee. And what the Colonel said is correct. Every bit of it was. And the issue that I'm bringing this bill for is simple. We don't want to put these troopers' lives in the discretion of the courts. I mean, to interpret the current law, it does not specifically say they can use their vehicle and emergency equipment whenever they're protecting the people that they are assigned to protect. This came to me in early, probably 2005, 2006, whenever President Bush came to Chattanooga, and I was sitting on the side of the road thinking, what authority do I have to sit here and run my lights and sirens down I-24 to protect the president? There's no statute in place. Of course, the Vanessa K. Free Act and all that was coming along, and I incited that in this bill because I don't want a trooper to go before a judge and jury and they say, well, no, the statute is interpreted this way or that way. The Colonel used two words that stands out to me is I think and probably. And we don't need to have I think and probably whenever a trooper's sitting in the courtroom trying to decide if he's going to be sued or not, or she. And that's why I brought this bill to y'all today. There was a couple that I just printed out a while ago coming down here. In 2022, December 19th, trooper injured in Biden motorcade accident. A member of the Delaware State Police Motorcycle Unit is recovering from injuries following a crash Monday morning as the trooper was escorting a motorcade of the President Biden to Wilmington Airport. Another one that I printed out happened September 14th, 2022. A police motorcycle and President Joe Biden's motorcade crashed on the freeway Wednesday afternoon en route to the North American International Auto Show downtown. So even though these roads are completely cut off, these troopers can wreck. We got law enforcement that are assisting these troopers, and they guard the president, the governor, the Speaker of the House, the lieutenant governor, and the attorney general. But yet there's no statute to allow them to use their lights and sirens unless you interpret what's already on the books, which makes no sense to me why we don't want to stand behind our troopers and give them the tools to do their job that's clearly written in black and white. Now, back in 2011, we had Trooper Wall that was killed over here in Rutherford County while blocking interstate I think it might have been 40 or 24. I'd have to look here. But anyways, he was blocking the intersection for the air show. Same thing they do whenever the president comes to town. And it was a 5-car accident. And if one of those people sued a trooper, the highway patrol, there's still nothing in statute to allow them to do what they're doing unless the judge and jury interprets it that they're doing the right thing. So I renew my motion.
Do we have any questions? Yes, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Chairman Russell, where is it? What's the posture of this with our neighbors down the hall with the Senate? Where's it sitting now, right now?
So they're waiting for me to run it and see what happens here. And I believe, and I didn't mention this, but I think there's like 3 reasons that they can use their emergency equipment that I detailed in the bill. I should have had that up here. Required for security, threat assessments, or safety precautions for the protectee. That's the only reason that they can run their lights and sirens. So it's not like they're going to be running up and down the road all the time with their lights and sirens on. But those 3 reasons.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chair Lady.
Any more questions for Chairman Russell? Oh, yes, Rebecca. Thank you, Chairman. Whatever.
Can you repeat those 3 things again?
I sure can, and I apologize for not mentioning it earlier. It's probably the most important part of the bill.
Yeah.
But they can only do this if it's required for security, threat assessments, or safety precautions for the protectee or general welfare to the public.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions? Representative Dixie.
Thank you, Representative Russell. I got a quick question. You cited those accidents, but how would this bill prevent those from happening? Maybe I'm missing something.
Yes, so the bill would not prevent the accidents. It would just say they have the legal authority to do what they're doing. If it makes sense, they have the authority to guard the president. They have the legal authority to guard and protect the governor, lieutenant governor, the speaker of the House, and the attorney general, and to use their lights and sirens when necessary under those reasons that's specified in the bill.
Okay.
Any more yes. Sure, we'll go out of session and we'll invite Colonel Perry back to the podium. You're recognized, Chairman Johnson.
Welcome, Colonel. I guess you heard what Representative Russell just said. Do you have a response?
No, thank you for having me, Colonel Matt Perry, Tennessee Highway Patrol. I'm still going to say I think, because I don't know, but I think current TCA allows for everything. I went to cadet school with Andy Wall. I was close friends with him. I was at the hospital when he passed away. He ran into the back of a vehicle that stopped for blue lights. He was completely covered by current state law. He got full benefits, state and federal, for line of duty death. So I guess that's my best response. I still believe we are covered by current state law. But I also appreciate the passion of wanting to take care of troopers, because I want the same thing.
So, in your opinion, would this bill be detrimental?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions for Colonel Perry? Yes, Chair, Representative Dixie.
I know you say you didn't think it would be detrimental, but do you think it's necessary?
I don't think it's necessary, but I don't think it's detrimental. Like I said, we're going to hold ourselves to a higher standard of how we operate our vehicles, and yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Colonel Perry? We'll go back into session. Does anybody have any more questions for Chairman Russell? Yes, Chairman Kiesling.
Thank you, Chair Lady. I'm focusing in on our attorney.
Do you want to hear from our?
Yeah, are you prepared? Would you mind? Could we go out of session again, Chair Lady,
Yes.
and have our attorney address this?
Yes, we're going
This
out
is
of
just a
session.
very unusual situation.
We're going
here
out
that
of
we're
session to
facing.
hear from our attorney.
Thank you, Matt Mundy from Legal. I want to touch on just a couple of comments and questions that were made that might just kind of to answer them a little bit more fully. I think what we're kind of touching on is qualified immunity. So most of us know when we're talking about law enforcement that as long as a law enforcement officer is acting within the scope of his duties as a police officer, a law enforcement officer, that he's got qualified immunity from prosecution unless he's being grossly negligent. And you know, what's laid out in the sponsor's bill are within the powers and duties of law enforcement officers, but I think the point of the bill is to expressly put those powers and duties within the scope of protective detail for the purposes of making sure that a court doesn't have to interpret whether or not what they were doing was part of their powers and duties for purposes of determining whether or not they had qualified immunity if something goes wrong. So what the bill does is it elaborates more specifically on certain powers and duties of law enforcement officers and how they can operate their vehicles and their equipment in this manner, and makes it clear that that's part of what they can do. And I think that would be beneficial to a court in determining whether or not if something goes wrong and they're at local law enforcement, not just THP, but a local law enforcement officer that's out there assisting with, because that's what this bill does, that's part of what this bill does, is it allows local law enforcement to assist THP upon request to protect whatever individuals in the protective detail. So I think that's kind of the thrust of the bill. The Vanessa K-free section of statute is a section, I can't remember how long it came into law, but it basically requires that law enforcement officers be competently trained in operating emergency vehicles that they're using. So it doesn't necessarily go to some of the things that you'd be doing in a protective detail, because there's more than just vehicle operation. There's equipment and other things that the Vanessa K-free Act does not cover. That's more about how to drive, like the officer was testifying, how to drive through an intersection, how to deal with situations at high speed, things like that. That's what the Vanessa K-free law does. So this is just a little bit different because it kind of sets in place in the code, kind of spells out what THP and local law enforcement can do with these protective details, and just makes it clear, I think, for a third party looking at something that happened to go wrong, that makes it abundantly clear that they were able to do it. That's kind of how I look at it. Thank you.
You're recognized, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair Lady. So we heard the Chairman Russell state that the Colonel had mentioned the word maybe, or if, or some other descriptive word there that relates to maybe being unsure. So back to you, Mr. Mundy. So you're saying that this would bring clarity? Can I interpret it as what does the clarity to the situation here? And I know you can't be, you're an impartial part of this committee. So, but did I misunderstand?
I think that as it was testified to, THP has a unit, I guess, that does protective details. They clearly, within their policies and procedures, have drilled down a lot more than the code in terms of what they do and what they require for training purposes and how they handle different situations. Not everything that falls within the scope of the police's arrest powers or their power to investigate crimes is spelled out in code. A lot of it's implied. A lot of it has to be determined by a court whether or not the police officer was acting within the scope of their employment or their duties. And so I think that the sponsor is trying to make it clear for the purposes of these protective details that they can operate their emergency vehicles as long as they're doing so consistent with the Vanessa K-free Act, as well as utilize their emergency equipment, which they're already allowed to do, obviously, because they're a police officer. They can use their agency's vehicles and equipment, but to put this specific duty, or to put these specific activities expressly in the code for the purposes of making it easier for a court to determine, I think, liability issues.
Okay, thank you. Well, okay, that wraps me up. And I thank you,
Sure.
Mr. Mundy, and Madam Chair, thank you for the time.
Are there any more questions while we're out of session? Seeing none, we'll go back into session. Do we have any more questions for our Chairman Russell? If not, call for questions have been called. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Your bill moves on to full committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and committee.
Chairman Russell again.
I got more.
We're on to item number 3, which was HJR 23, also by Chairman Russell. We have a motion and a second. Chairman, you're recognized to explain your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Lady and Committee. I didn't realize this one would bring such media attention, but apparently it did.
It did.
So this one designates the pumpkin pie as a symbol of the state of Tennessee, and this resolution just does it for the 2 years of this General Assembly, and this was at the request of Massville Intermediate School back home, and it's just to teach the kids how the process works.
Do we have any questions from, yes, Chairman Powell?
Yes, one problem I've had with it, when I was in high school, I majored in math in college. I minored in math, so the pi that I wanted to designate was pi r squared. And would you consider an amendment to add that on?
Just for you, I would.
No further questions, Madam Chair.
If we have no other questions, we are ready to vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. The ayes have it, and your bill again moves on to full committee.
Thank you.
Up next, we have item number 5, HB 948 by Chairman Boyd. We have a motion and a second, and Chairman Boyd, you're recognized to explain your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Lady, Committee. If any of you have ever lived in a community that has experienced a ice storm in the winter, or you've gone through a tornado, you have seen those electrical line workers and the work that they do through the night, sometimes 24 hours a day, to restore electricity, which is critical to our lives. And so many governments, the federal government, many local governments across the country, annually recognize the line workers on Line Worker Appreciation Day, which is the second Monday in April. And I would like to make Tennessee the first state in the country to permanently designate a special day to celebrate the contributions of the line workers. I have worked with the Tennessee Electrical Cooperative Association in conjunction with them to put this together. And so what this bill, House Bill 948, would do was it would designate the second Monday in April of each year would be designated as the Tennessee Line Worker Appreciation Day. Madam Chair, Lady, I'll take any questions.
Thank you for that explanation. Do we have any questions? Yes, Chairman Keesling.
Thank you, Chair Lady. I'm just curious, Chairman Boyd, is this in conjunction, this particular day is in conjunction with any other designated day or named designated day? It's not a quick trick question. I was just curious, is there any other day that's designated as the second Monday of April?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Lady. For a minute, I thought it was a trick question.
No, I promise.
What day is that?
I promise.
I'm not aware of any.
I didn't know.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, Chair Lady. Thank you, Chairman.
Welcome. Any more questions for our sponsor? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and your bill moves on to full committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Lady, and Committee.
Item number 6 has been rolled 1 week. Oh. House Bill 562. Next up is item number 7, House Bill 184 by Chairman Whitson. We have a motion and a second, and you are recognized on your bill.
Thank you, Chair Lady and Committee.
I see we have an amendment, drafting
yes,
code.
I have an amendment, and the amendment I have is drafting code 3470.
That's correct. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second, and Chairman, you're recognized to explain your amendment.
Amendment, Chair Lady, actually just substitutes the name of Political Action Committee instead of Political Campaign Committee. Kind of cleans up the language.
Do we have any questions for on the amendment?
Well, we need to vote on it, don't we?
Yes.
We do need to
yes.
vote,
Okay.
Chair Lady, so I'll call for the question. on
Okay. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
that. Aye.
Those opposed, no. The amendment goes on the bill. Now, would you explain your bill to us?
Okay, thank you, Committee. This bill was brought to me by the Bureau of Ethics and Campaign Finance. And just for clarification, remember, the Bureau includes the Tennessee Ethics Commission and the Tennessee Registry of Election Finance. This bill is intended to simplify certain procedures for the Bureau of Ethics and Campaign Finance. Under current law, for Section 1, under current law, the Bureau staff is hired at the recommendation of the Executive Director with approval from the Board of Directors. This bill will allow the Executive Director to hire or replace Bureau support staff without Board approval. The Executive Director, Assistant Director, and General Counsel positions will still require approval from the Board. Section 2, this bill allows the Bureau to remove uncollected civil penalties from the appropriate register once it has been determined that these penalties cannot be reasonably collected. The types of situations would primarily be situations where the individual has died, cannot be found, or where the cost of attaining a judgment outweighs the state interest in collecting the civil penalty. However, individuals that they did not collect who do not pay their penalties will still not be able to run for office. The current consequences for unpaid penalties will still apply. Section 3. This is to save the state money. Finally, this bill allows the Registry and the Ethics Commission to provide notice to filers via email. Under current law, the Bureau is required to provide notice via certified mail, which is costly and time-consuming. I believe the estimate is almost $20,000 a year. If somebody's not going to reply to a certified mail, they're surely not going to be good actors, I guess you would say. All filers will be required to provide an email address to the registry or commission. If an email address is not available, the registry and the Ethics Commission may send notices via first-class mail. With that, Chair Lady, I renew my motion.
Do we have any questions for Chairman Whitson? Chairman Powers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, one thing I want to clarify, when you talk about running for office, does that mean any state office or any office anywhere? Or is there a definition of?
The definition, I tell you what, make sure I get this right, I would request to go out of session, and I have members of the Bureau here that could answer that correctly.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, okay. We're going to. We're going to go out of session now. Would you please identify yourself for the record and your department?
Yes, Chair, Lady Runner. Bill Young, I'm the Executive Director of the Bureau of Ethics and Campaign Finance, and I need to turn this thing on. There you go. Again, I'm Bill Young, the Executive Director of the Bureau of Ethics and Campaign Finance, and I'm happy to be here with you today.
We're happy to have you today. Do we have
Thank
any
you.
questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Bill, for coming out. The question I had really, because I've run into that situation before where somebody was penalized or whatever, but I didn't know, can they run for any type of office, like a county office or any type of other state office? Is there a definition of what offices that they would not be eligible for?
Those are defined by code, and it depends on whether the campaign finance, they would be prohibited from running for any state or local office. As I recall, the statement of interest is just a state office.
Okay, so it's just primarily, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. To follow up.
A follow-up,
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, so it's just primarily for a state office. If they've been fined and have an unpaid fine, then they could not run for another state office, but they could run for.
No, not if it's a campaign finance statement
Okay.
problem.
Okay.
Then it would be state and local office. It differs depending on whether it's the campaign finance statement or a statement of interest. That's where you file your statement of conflicts of interest.
Right.
Those are state office only.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. That was my question.
Any more questions? Seeing none, we appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, Chair Lady Rutta.
We'll go back into session. Do we have any more questions for Chairman Whitson? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and we move on to full committee.
Thank you, Chair Lady.
Next up is item number 8, House Bill 182, also by Chairman Whitson. We have a motion and a second, and Chairman, you are recognized to explain your bill.
Chair Lady, I also have an amendment on this one too that clarifies or changes sections 1 and 2 of the bill.
That would be 03723.
3723, yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. We have a motion and a second on the amendment. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment goes on the bill. You're free to
Okay, again,
explain your bill.
was brought to me by the Tennessee Bureau of Ethics and Campaign Finance, and I'm proud to carry it. Again, Sections 1 and 2, under current statute, members of the staff of the General Assembly must disclose to the Ethics Commission if they are contracted to provide campaign services to candidates for the state. This bill further clarifies that they must disclose campaign services and entitlements, and it will eliminate the quarterly filing. So what we're doing is currently it's quarterly filing. We're changing it to yearly, but if they also engage in this, and it starts within, they must file within 5 days, but they still have to do it every year. It just removes the quarterly filing. It just becomes redundant that we have found out. That's for Sections 1 and 2. Section 3, each year the Commission is required to provide an annual report to the General Assembly by February 1st. In recent years, the Commission has had to request a formal deadline extension because the data for the report was not available by February 1st. This moves the date from February 1st to July 1st, which allows the Commission additional time to prepare the report without requiring an extension and have all the data they need to complete the report. Section 4 clarifies which statutes the Ethics Commission can issue formal advisory opinions on. It also outlines the procedures the Commission must follow to issue an informal advisory opinion. It states that people who adhere to the requirements provided in a formal advisory opinion or informal advisory opinion made in writing will not be penalized if the opinion is later determined to be incorrect. That's Section 4. Section 5, the Comprehensive Government Ethics Reform Act of 2006 required local government entities to adopt an ethical standard by resolution or local ordinance. So each city and county must have this an ethical standard. This bill requires local entities to provide the Ethics Commission with the name and contact information of the person responsible for administering and enforcing their ethical standards. For example, many times it's the county attorney or law director, but what's happened is when people file complaints and it comes to the registry, but it's actually a local complaint, many counties and cities have not updated their list of who they need to contact. It just helps expedite the process. With that, Madam Chairman, I renew my motion.
Do we have any questions for Chairman Whitson? No questions? Good for you. Question's been called. We'll now vote. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Your bill moves on to full committee.
Okay, thank you, Chair Lady, and thank you,
Thank
committee,
you.
and happy Valentine's Day to the ladies.
Thank you. Thank you. Up next, we have item number 9, House Bill 47 by Chairman Doggett. You have a motion and a second, Chairman Doggett, and you're recognized to explain your bill.
Well, good afternoon,
Good
everyone.
afternoon.
I hope everyone is having a marvelous day. I know it's been a long day, and I'll try to be brief, but I have a constituent who contacted me last year after we had, they'd got a copy of the Blue Book, and we're looking through it, and so they called me one day and said, "Do you know what our state motto is?" And I said, "I think so." And I was incorrect. They told me it was agriculture and commerce. And so I, just like everyone else, thought about the volunteer state and everything else. And so we began talking about it and came up with a proposal for an additional state motto. So if you will indulge me for just a few minutes. In 1987, the 95th General Assembly adopted the official motto of the state as agriculture and commerce. These words that first appeared on the state seal, introduced during Governor Brownlow's administration in 1869, do not fully capture the spirit of Tennessee. When people think of the 16th state, undoubtedly a reference to the volunteers is made. Unofficially, we are known as the volunteer state. This moniker led to the mascot of our state's university, but it did not begin in the annals of sports history. In 1812, 3,500 Tennesseans answered the call for volunteers and mustered at Camp Blunt in Fayetteville, Tennessee during the Red Stick Rebellion, and later ended up fighting in the War of 1812 and the Battle of New Orleans. It was estimated that some 20,000 Tennesseans participated during that war. Years later, President James K. Polk called for 2,600 Tennessee volunteers during the Mexican-American War, and guess how many showed up? Roughly 30,000 Tennesseans came forward. Tennesseans also went to aid the Texans during the fight for Texas independence, and time again over the 246 years of our state's history, the residents of Tennessee have willingly gone forth to help their neighbors, both near and far, in times of war and natural disaster. It is that willingness to serve others that have earned Tennesseans the name of the volunteers. Therefore, I propose an additional motto for our state to be, "Send me," to reflect the heart of the people of this great state. Isaiah chapter 6 verse 8 says, "And I heard a voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And then I said, Here I am, send me." This piece of scripture shows that God wants willing volunteers in His service, and only after some trials is Isaiah cleansed of his sin, and with grateful and enthusiastic heart, Isaiah doesn't hesitate in taking the opportunity to say, "Here I am, send me." So this is the spirit of Tennesseans. When the rally cry for help in the battle is raised, it is Tennesseans who respond. When hurricanes destroy our country's coast, it's Tennesseans who mobilize and respond. When tornadoes and floods wreak havoc in our state and in our neighbor states, it's Tennesseans who pitch in to help build back. We are Tennessee volunteers. And when the call is raised, "Whom shall I send?" we know the answer, and that is, "Send me." So friends, this proposal for an additional motto, we let the pride that we have in the people of our state and their willingness to serve their fellow man be reflected, and add an additional motto with bold declaration, "Send me."
Wow. I'm impressed.
Well,
Thank you for that history lesson. Members, do we have any questions? Yes, we do.
Of course.
Chairman Kiesling, of course.
Chair Lady, beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Beautifully said. And I think that this committee needs to send a recommendation up to the governor's office that the next state of the state needs to be read and presented by you, sir.
I would argue that you would be a far better presenter for the state of the state.
No, I would debate you on that.
Well.
But it is, and I really appreciate you bringing that. And I tell you, he's got into some history today.
He did.
It's
We had a history
interesting
lesson.
to listen to that, and I appreciate you very much, Chairman. Thank you for that, and I'll be supporting this bill. Thank you.
Well,
thank you, Chair Lady.
Thank you for that. And we have a question from Chairman Powers.
Yes, I would like to add one additional thing that says, "Send my mother-in-law," if you don't care. No, no. I do. I guess I do have one question that says, instead of, you mentioned the volunteer state many times, and I just wonder why you did not do the volunteer state rather than "send me." So I know your biblical reference to it, but was there any other reason you didn't want to? Yeah, well, I'm sorry.
You go. I'm still stunned by the mother-in-law comment.
I'm sorry, and
I can't get past that. But yes, you're recognized.
we are known as the volunteer state, and when this constituent brought me this, and she sent me all of this information here to share, and I think "send me" is a very powerful yet subtle statement, because it captures the willingness and the attitude of everyone. I know when we think of the Tennessee Volunteers, we think of orange and white checkers and coon dogs and David Crockett, but really I think when we look at "send me," it's got a deeper, more powerful and purposeful meaning that I think that's something that really it's us. It's Tennessee. I don't know how else to say it.
And Madam,
yes,
follow. Yeah, and I appreciate the lesson, and I remember Battle of New Orleans and I was thinking about that when you were talking about it, and the number of people that volunteered, and I think that's where they originally came up with that. So I appreciate that. I guess I maybe lean a little bit more toward the volunteer state, but I like this one too. But okay, that's all. Thank you.
Any more questions? Are we ready to vote? All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Send me goes on to full committee.
Send me to full.
Send you to full.
Thank you. And I will, can I say something?
Sure.
Miss Derryberry, Leanna Derryberry, is the constituent that sent this to me, and she is a high school teacher in the district. And so her class was not able to watch the presentation today because they're already out of school, but hopefully in full, we'll have some guests that are watching via live stream with us that day. So I'll be sure to announce those when we get there. But thank you all.
Thank you. Next up, we have item number 10, which is House Bill 870 by Chairman Lafferty. We have a motion. We have a second. Chairman Lafferty, you're recognized to explain your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee. House Bill 870 would ensure accountability and transparency around the procurement of lethal injection drugs without revealing the names of the people involved in the execution process. Last spring, Governor Lee had to stop an execution just hours before it was to take place because he was alerted to problems with the injection protocol. The victim's family was already seated to view the execution when it was halted after decades of waiting. If the lethal injection protocol had been more transparent, perhaps this last hour stay would not have happened and the victim's family would not have had to have gone through all of that and then again have to wait for their day of justice to come. Governor Lee asked for a third-party investigation into some of the problems with the protocol, and the report was released last year. At the root of the findings, the report states there's a lack of government accountability. There's danger in allowing any government entity to continue to carry out lethal injections without transparency, and that's what this bill aims to do. If Tennessee wants to continue to use this as a method of execution, then the secrecy around the process should probably come to an end. No amount of tweaking the protocol addresses the lack of accountability that we currently have in the process, and we don't want to be in a situation like we were back last year. So with that, I'll take any questions. Or we may have a speaker or two.
We do. We have a request for testimony on this bill. We'll now go out of session, and we'll hear from Deborah Fisher with the Tennessee Coalition for Open Government. Director Fisher, you'll have, please introduce yourself and give us your
okay,
who you're with.
Right.
And you have 3 minutes for your testimony.
Okay, thank you. I'm Deborah Fisher, and I'm Executive Director of the Tennessee Coalition for Open Government. We track changes to the Public Records and Open Meetings Law, and we're supportive of this legislation. It fixes a problematic law that the Tennessee Department of Correction asked for and got nearly 10 years ago. It's a law that has been used to make confidential information about the lethal injection drugs used in executions. And we know about the problems now because of the report and the independent investigation that the governor asked for. That report was released in December and revealed a number of failures by prison leadership as well as by individuals and by the compounding pharmacy that developed and delivered the drugs. The compounding pharmacy that the state had chosen failed to test the drugs according to the state's protocol to ensure they weren't contaminated and would work like they should. The report by the governor actually showed that these problems went uncorrected for years. And however, if this exemption that made those things confidential had come to light they could have come to light much sooner, and the problems could have been fixed much sooner. And that's really the purpose of the public records law, is to ensure that citizens and, frankly, you as lawmakers can have the information that you need to make sure that government works right. And obviously, I mean, this is the ultimate power that the state has over its citizens, the execution and the death penalty. We believe the process should be transparent, and this exemption has blocked that. I do want to address that when the Department of Corrections first asked for this exemption, they had argued that it was necessary to protect the pharmacies from harassment. But evidence of any harassment by is basically by activists has been really non-existent. One journalist couldn't find a single documented case of threatening or harassing speech by so-called abolitionists. In another instance, the FBI concluded that the allegations of such threats were unspecified and refused to even investigate the matter further. In fact, in Tennessee, the current drug supplier has now been reported by the local media, yet despite this, still no reports of harassment. It's important to know that this legislation would not impair the ability of Tennessee to carry out executions. Since 2018, 5 of the 7 inmates on Tennessee's death row have chosen electrocution, not lethal injection. And also, it's really important for you to know that other states that have the death penalty, including Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Nevada, and Utah, do not have this loophole that allows for this secrecy about the suppliers and the drugs. So we're very supportive of fixing this and hope that you consider that and bring back some transparency to this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you,
very
Chairman.
much. Chairman Lafferty, you recognized for any closing statements? Oh, we got to go back in session. Oh, okay. We'll pretend we're out of session.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While we're out of session, I'm just wondering, is the administration here? Is there anyone from the department, that Department of Corrections, that would be want to speak on this? But they haven't requested that, I don't suppose. Okay, then my apology, Madam Chair. I do have a question to the sponsor once you return.
We're officially back in session. Do you have any closing?
Stand for questions.
Okay. Chairman Kiesling?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question, Chairman. So let's go back to the department. Has the department, have you confronted them, spoke to them about the lack of confidentiality, how that would affect their ability to procure the drugs that are required to carry out an execution?
You're recognized.
We did have a conversation. They came by my office. We have a new commissioner. He's new to Tennessee, and his experience where he used to work, he indicated that that was a concern of his, that he had such a hard time back home trying to procure the drugs that were necessary.
And that Arizona, it was Arizona.
That's correct. And we talked, and it is, today anybody can throw a camera in your face. It's probably happened to 1 or 2 of you today. But the reality is, to your question, yes, we spoke. He did express some concern with that, but I think as big as this country is, there's plenty of places that we can go to procure what we need.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chair Lady.
Chairman Powers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the sponsor, a few years ago, Senator Yeager and I had a bill that actually said if the drugs were unavailable, then the method of electrocution would be the one that would be used in the execution. And at that time, what we were told and had heard through TDOC and several different places that that the drugs may be unavailable. And the reason for the unavailability was because a lot of drug companies were getting a lot of pressure from a lot of different people, a lot of different activists and stuff to they did not want their name out there. They did not want their name to be used as a supplier of this drug. And do you think that this bill might make that a little bit more unavailable because a lot of companies that do not want their name associated with this drug, do you think it might make it even more unavailable if we get into that transparency part of that?
I would
You're
not
recognized.
go so far as to say that that is not a possibility. However, if you know much about corporations and companies, setting up LLCs and doing different things to hide who you are, where you are, things like that is not uncommon. If we got to the point where there was only, say, 1 or 2 suppliers of this product, if there's a profit to be had, somebody will find a way to get the product to market.
You're recognized.
Yeah, and that was my understanding, was that there is only, at that time, a few years ago, there may be more now, but at that time, my understanding was there was only 1 or 2 suppliers of that drug, because there was more people that made it, but did not want to supply it for that purpose. Do you know, are there a lot more suppliers now? I mean, is it a lot more available now than it was at one point?
That I could not answer.
Okay.
That I don't know if there's more suppliers now or not.
Okay.
But I'll go back to what I may have said a minute ago. I've got the medicine head with all the allergy medication I'm on. I apologize.
I'm with you.
But there is certainly, in this day and age, it's easy for anybody to go out and start making somebody's life difficult with social media and what have you.
Sure.
But we're talking about something that is pretty serious. We're talking about the state's ultimate authority, and that is execution. If we can bring light to this process, I have a hard time thinking that it's not better that we have more light on it than we don't. The other part will take care of itself. We'll figure that out one way or the other. But we don't need to be doing this in secrecy. My opinion.
Right.
Any more questions?
Just one more.
One more, okay.
And I agree. I mean, I think that we need to we need to have some type of transparency, but we also need to. I think the original intent of the other bill when they came to us years ago was because of the drug was going to be unavailable, and so I don't know what the supply chain is now, whether or not there's more out there on the market, there's more, or if there's only 1 or 2. So I kind of worry about the availability of the drug once we disclose, who is doing it or whatever. And I think that was the reason for the intent of the bill before. So that was all I was comment. Okay. That's all. Thank you.
May I respond? I'm sorry.
Yes,
I just wanted
yes.
to say thank you for not bringing up your mother-in-law again.
Okay. I don't think she's watching.
Representative Eldridge, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative, is this something that you'll be continuing to work with TDOC on, or do they plan on having more input? And if you move out of here today, are you going to be having conversations with them going forward?
It is the intention to continue that conversation, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have anything else to share with this committee?
Renew my motion.
Thank you very much. We're ready to call for question. Question's been called. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and you move on to full committee.
Thank you. Thank you, committee.
Next up is item number 11, which is House Bill 13 by Representative Baum. Do we have a motion and a second? You have a motion and a second, and Representative, you're recognized to explain your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know that every member on this committee is proud of Tennessee's conservative budget. Unfortunately, not all households in Tennessee have conservative budgets, or at least not all households in Tennessee save enough money for retirement and unexpected medical expenses and perhaps even education. In fact, there's a study that suggests that households age 55 to 65 have only saved an average of $85,000 for retirement. That's not enough. one of the problems may be only 50% of private sector employees have a retirement account through their employer. So, this is a bill that offers a potential solution on how to get Tennesseans to save more money. The treasurer currently, through TCRS, the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System, invests money for public sector employees. And it would seem to be easy for the treasurer to invest money for private sector employees in sort of the same, using the same approach. And so that's what this bill does. It would be a bill that would require the treasurer to offer retirement savings accounts of sort of a defined contribution, of a defined contribution type nature, like a 401k, where the treasurer would receive contributions by employees through their employer, and then the treasurer would administer these retirement funds. These would be funds that are contributed by the employees in the private sector. The funds that would be contributed to these accounts would not be funds that are provided as employer matches. In fact, if an employer were to match these dollars, then that would make the retirement account fall under ERISA regulations, and so this bill would specifically prohibit that. Employers would not be permitted to match the employees' contributions. The employers would just be required to create a pathway for the dollars to go from the private sector employee to their retirement account administered by their treasurer. If an employer already offers a retirement account, then the employer would not be covered by the legislation. This legislation would just cover employers that don't currently offer their private sector employees any kind of retirement savings. One issue that gets brought up is what would be sort of the default, what would be the amount that the employee would be required to contribute to the account. The employees wouldn't be required to contribute anything, but as a default, it would be set at 5%, and then when the employee goes through setting their benefits, they could raise it a little bit, they could lower it all the way to zero. The program would be rolled out gradually over a period of time, depending on firm size. Some may wonder what's in this for the employer. It might be easier for the employer to attract employees because the employer could then offer, when running job advertisements, that they offer a retirement plan. It would be one administered by the state treasurer, but they could still say that they offer retirement benefits that aren't currently being offered. Again, if the employer currently offers a retirement plan for their employees, then that employer and those employees wouldn't be covered by this legislation. This would just be legislation for those employees whose employers don't currently offer anything. Now, there might be some administration costs for these plans. The state wouldn't be contributing dollars, the employer wouldn't be contributing dollars, but you'd have to administer the plans. And the legislation, this proposed legislation, says that the costs of administering the plans by the state, by the treasurer, would be paid in fees from the accounts that belong to the employees. Typically in the private sector, an administration fee is a fraction of a percent. That's what you might pay in the private sector. And if the administration costs are the same at the state level, then that would be the fee that would need to be paid by the employees out of their accounts. And so there wouldn't be any cost to the state in terms of administration because the employees would pay for that. There may also be some concerns that the state would be providing this retirement administration, but the legislation, the proposed legislation, would allow the treasurer to contract with any private entity that he or the board that this legislation would create sees fit, so that currently there are private entities that provide certain retirement services through TCRS for the kinds of defined contribution retirement plans that are already being offered. So this is basically a way of having the treasurer do more of what he's already doing, more of what's already set up for public sector employees, just doing it for private sector employees. This would offer a potential benefit that's very large to private sector employees because they'd have their own retirement accounts that they could contribute to that would be managed that they currently don't have. So there's a big potential benefit, which means when they retire, if they've got retirement savings or if they have a medical emergency, the rest of us wouldn't have to pay for that because these individuals would have their own savings. And it would be at a relatively low cost to the state because the treasurer's already doing this. The treasurer would be doing it for more people, and the administration costs would be paid by funds, by fees out of the funds. I'm going to close with one little additional bit of information. Richard Thaler is an economist who a couple of years ago won a Nobel Prize for a theory called nudge theory. And here's the gist of nudge theory. It says that people are faced every day with right and wrong decisions, or maybe wise and unwise decisions. And a lot of times, people are fairly indifferent between the two, so that if you just sort of nudge them in one direction, they're more than happy to make the wise decision if they're just given a little guidance or a little push. In the context of this bill, it may be that people are fairly indifferent between saving a little bit of money for retirement versus not. If they have to go through the hassle of setting up retirement accounts in the private sector, finding a broker downtown that will manage it for them, that's just enough of a hassle, just enough of a barrier to prevent some people, maybe a lot of people, from saving for retirement. But if you just nudge them in one direction, then they're really more than happy to save a small percentage of their income for retirement if it's all set up for them, and all they have to do is say upon hire, sure, contribute 5% of my income to a retirement account. Nudge theory says if we just slightly nudge people in this direction, then we can get them to make more wise decisions in terms of saving for retirement, medical emergencies, and the other elements in life that I've mentioned. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions? Yes, Chairman Kiesling.
Why is it that I always start off that way? Lead off there,
right,
Chair Lady,
right.
do you know? Just full of questions. You did a good job. It's a great job. Wonderful presentation. What position is the treasurer here? Has he deferred, or is he full support? Because I don't see him, and I'm not trying to be cute, but I don't see him out here. Chairman, where is he? Where's the department on this?
My observation is the same. He's not here.
He isn't here. No. Okay. So does this mean that Billy Bob's tire repair, Billy Bob they can start their own through working with the treasurer, or am I confused now? Any employer can work with the treasurer to ask this simply, and through their assistance they can create their own retirement. Is that correct?
The catch is, Madam Chair,
sure.
If the employer already offers retirement benefits,
if the employer already offers, okay.
If they're already offering benefits, either defined contribution benefits, defined benefit retirement plans, if they're offering retirement benefits of any kind, they're not covered by this legislation. This proposed legislation would affect employers who don't currently offer any kind of retirement benefits.
And that is my question. Billy Bob doesn't have any. He's got 6 employees, and they want to kickstart some retirement. So this would allow that.
This would allow that. This bill says if your employer in the private sector doesn't offer anything, this bill says your employer has to offer this option. Now, the employer's not contributing to it. All the employer has to do is say, we'll deduct a certain amount from your paycheck and send it to your retirement account. And the place we're sending it to is a retirement account that's managed by the treasurer, the same procedure that's set up for thousands of state employees through TCRS anyway.
I'm not exactly sold on this, to tell you, to be perfectly honest with you, and please don't take that, I'm saying that with much, in all respect to you. I'm not sure where I'm going, but great job. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Chair Lee.
Representative Alexander.
Thank you, Chairman Lady. Thank you, Chairman, for, I think I see your heart here wanting people to save. I'm not sure that this will make that happen, but I understand where you're coming from based on your nudge theory. But why would the treasurer want to do that? I mean, he's got a ton of stuff on his plate already. And then why wouldn't an employer just go down the street to a million others that are around and available, bank on every corner that would help people invest and help people to save I mean, I got 4 stockbrokers myself. So, I mean, what would be the reason that, I'm assuming that you want the treasurer to do it because the treasurer has done a phenomenal job with our state. And so I see where you're going there, but I just don't see the need for it. Has the treasurer, does he want it bad enough to come to us and ask for money to set this up? Because this is something that's going to take money to set up, I assume.
You asked several questions.
I'm
Let me
sorry.
see if I can comment on several of them.
Sentence. I apologize.
You would think, with the opportunities that are available in the private sector, that people would save for retirement, and yet they don't. Like I said initially, 50% of all employers don't offer any kind of retirement savings for their employees. They don't have it through work, and they don't end up saving on their own because it's not sort of pre-set up for them where all they have to do is check a box and say withdraw 5% from my paycheck and divert it into my 401k. So the private sector employers, a lot of them, half of them, aren't doing this to begin with. Employees aren't doing all of this, aren't taking the initiative on their own. And the result is we have lots of people who get to retirement, they haven't saved enough, they have medical emergencies. That's bad for them, but it affects all of us too because we end up paying for a portion of that when they're not able to make those payments. So this is a bill that's designed to, as I've said, just provide a small nudge that allows them to sort of agree to send money to a retirement account that's managed by an entity that's already managing literally hundreds of millions of dollars for thousands of employees. It sort of expands the operation, but it doesn't create a new operation.
You're recognized.
But my concern here is that we're asking the state to basically set up a private business. I don't know. Just have some real concerns with this. Thank you.
Next, we have Representative Eldridge.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Chairman, and maybe I misunderstood a few minutes ago, but did you say that if this were set up, that Billy Bob's Tire Store would have to participate and offer it to their employees? That they would. Did I misunderstand that?
They don't have to participate in the form of making employer contributions. All they have to do is
offer it.
Send the money to the employee's account.
But they would be required to offer it.
They would be required to offer it to the employee so that if the employee wanted to send a portion of their money to a retirement account, their retirement account would sort of be pre-set up, or it would already exist through the treasurer. The employer would just have to make the deduction from the paycheck.
As someone who's run a small business and building off the 6 employees at the tire store, you're adding administrative costs in there that a lot of small businesses just don't have. They don't have the manpower to do it. I know we've always got an accountant, but at the same time you're going to be paying extra for that service. And I do understand what your goal is to try to get people to save. And to build off of Representative Alexander's comments, we're setting up a government business to take the place of a private business where, there's any number of whether they're stockbrokers or banks or whoever, that anyone that really is interested in saving can go to. I'm wondering if they offered this, and you've got someone that's got 3 kids at home, And I mean, you know, that 5% could be quite a sum of money. Are they really going to take advantage of it? And with the change from private business to the government, I've seen that happen once today, and I don't really like it. I don't want to see it happen again. And I appreciate you, and I think the world of you. And I think I know your heart's in the right place, but I just can't see, you know, that this added, and I'm going to say burden on the Treasury. It looks to me like that would be a huge undertaking for the state of Tennessee. But thank you.
Next, we have Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Baum, have you personally talked to the treasurer about this?
The treasurer will provide a recommendation through a committee called Pensions and Insurance, and he hasn't yet, but he will provide a recommendation.
Have you talked to him before? About this bill?
I haven't talked to him this year.
Oh, okay.
I talked to him last year. I think we all probably suspect the same thing. He's probably not begging to do this, but I don't know. I don't know that he's actively opposing it yet.
How much did you guesstimate that the admin fee would be for this?
In the private sector, administration fees are typically, sort of the rule of thumb, is 0.25%.
Well, the scenario that the chairman was talking about with the tire shop, if you have 6 employees, and let's just throw out a number, they make $500 in a week, and they take 5%, so it's $25. So if they do it for a month, let's say 100, and then what happens in 3 months when you have 3 of those 5 that quit and they want their money back? Would that not add to the admin cost?
These would be defined contribution benefit plans, and so the employees would own the accounts. In a sense, you could say they're vested immediately, but vesting rules really wouldn't apply because the employees would own the accounts, and they could switch employers, they could not be employed, they would own the account.
It's a reality now in our world that, employees have a tendency to move around, and what I'm saying is the admin fee, what it's traditionally, if you have a lot of turnover, which we see in today's world, and they want their money back after 3 months, they could get it back, right?
Well, I would respond this way. They own the account, and so they wouldn't need to get it back from the employer. It's their account, and it wouldn't
So the
involve
employer would have to get it back.
The employer would not have to get it back.
All right, how would they get it back?
Well, it's their account. They can withdraw the money from it. Now, when you save money for different kinds of accounts, these retirement accounts tend to have early withdrawal penalties. Any 401k or Roth IRA would. Now, those IRS rules would still apply. These would be retirement accounts just like any other retirement account. Wouldn't be a penalty that the employer is in charge of or has to assess. The employee would own the account. They could take it with them from one employer to another. Anybody can withdraw from a retirement account anytime they want under special circumstances, but there may be an early withdrawal penalty. But those are IRS rules that cover all retirement accounts, including TCRS accounts that are defined contribution accounts that are not of the defined benefit nature. A defined benefit account would be like a pension.
Right.
Vesting rules would apply.
Right. That's all I have, Chairman.
Next, we have Chairman Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chairman Bond. I think we've talked about this in the past. Just one correction there, a Roth IRA does not have that. The other IRA, just a regular IRA, would have that 10% withdrawal penalty on that. So they could set up a Roth IRA. Of course, I can sell a Roth IRA to anybody in here. We're kind of competing with, I feel like we're kind of competing with business because there's a lot of companies out there that sell IRAs, sell different type of pension plans, and then we're kind of turning it over to the state. If Johnny Joe's Tire Shop, that right down from Billy Bob's, and if they have 200 employees and they have they already have a pension plan and everything set up for them, and the state says we're going to do it, for all people, what would keep Johnny Joe's Tire Shop from just saying, hey, we're not going to offer it anymore, we're going to turn that over and let the state run it? I think that would be, maybe probably a problem that we would have. A lot of companies would just turn it over and say, this is costing us a lot of money to do it, let's let the state run it, and we'll just do away with our retirement program. But that's just a thought that I had there when you were talking about it. When it comes back to savings, it's really kind of a personal responsibility for everybody to, when I went with no pension plan for a while, I got a Roth IRA, had an automatic deduction every month out of my paycheck, out of my draft, my bank account. So you can do it that way too and still be able to save that way without actually funding it and writing a check for it every month. Have you talked with, does NAFA, the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors, do you know if they support this or not?
Well, I guess I know, like you know, that there have been several lobbyists who are not enchanted with this bill, and off the top of my head, I'm not going to be able to recall exactly who their clients are, but probably one of the lobbyists represents that client. They probably told me, but it was the 8th meeting out of 12, and I don't remember exactly who the clients are, but the
and I'm a member, and I just wondered if you had talked to anybody from there. I haven't talked to anybody that's a member of that particular thing. And last year, I think, went through pensions and insurance with this. Did it get a negative recommendation at that time? Did you take it through last year? Did it get referred to pensions? We kind of talked about that.
Well, I don't want to tell you the wrong thing, but I don't remember presenting it in pensions.
Okay.
So I'm going to say last year it didn't get a recommendation from pensions. Maybe I've forgotten that, but I don't remember standing in front of that committee and presenting.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
I am scheduled to this year.
Okay.
And I think that seems different. But
okay. Is that in the near future? I mean, is that going to be in the next week or two or something? Or?
It will be... I think it'll be a week from Monday.
Okay. Madam Chair, I'm gonna make a motion, if you don't care, that we wait until we get a recommendation from pensions and insurance on this, because I think that will help us try to determine whether or not this would be a good idea. But I'm gonna leave that entirely up to the chair, but that's the motion I'd like to put forward.
Do I have a second to that motion?
Well, I'll second.
You'll second that motion. So all in favor of, state your motion again.
Okay, my motion is that it go in front of pensions and insurance before it comes back to this committee, that we get a recommendation, that we find out what that recommendation would be.
Okay. We're going to...
No, I was just rolling it, yeah.
Okay, we're good. All in favor of Chairman Powers' motion, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Ayes have it. We'll see you back maybe in a few weeks.
Thank you all.
I'm almost sure that it got a negative recommendation last year.
Next up, we have item number 12, which is House Bill 1153 by Representative Sherrill. You have a motion and a second, Representative, and you're recognized to explain your bill. Get your, mic on. Get your phone
you.
on. I
Get
see
phone-
that you do have an amendment.
Yes, ma'am.
Drafting code 003785.
3785,
Is
yes.
that correct? Do we have a motion and a second? Well, you already did that? Okay. Do we have, could you explain your amendment?
Yes, ma'am. The amendment is to add to the bill is where Major General Haston was they call him the TAG. He is the Admiral General from 2010 to 2019. So we have to add this bill because he is not the present person in charge of our National Guard. So that's what the amendment does.
That's your amendments.
Yeah.
So we're going to vote on the amendment. All in favor of this amendment, say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment goes on the bill. Representative Sherrill, would you explain your bill?
Yes, ma'am. So this bill that we have, House Bill 1153, is connected to Warren County, where I represent the 43rd District, and they're in the process, Tennessee National Guard is building a new guard there in Warren County, and they have asked me to carry a bill that we name the new Tennessee National Guard there in Warren County Major General Terry Max Haston. That's what this bill does.
Do we have any questions for Representative Sherrill? Yes, Chairman Johnson.
Representative Sherrill, you said rename the National Guard. I think you mean the National Guard Armory. Is that correct?
National Guard Armory, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry.
Do we have any more questions? The questions have been called. We're ready to vote on this bill. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and your bill moves on to full committee.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Item number 3, House Bill 1100. Just a moment. Okay, we're just going to skip to, it's been a long day, hasn't it, sir? You've waited patiently. We are going to skip to item number 16, HJR 58 by Representative Raper. I have a motion and a second, and Representative, you're recognized on your bill.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you, committee, for the motion and the second. This is a joint resolution to the federal government, and I'm going to describe it just a little bit. Health care is available to veterans who are determined to have a service-connected disability by the Department of Veteran Affairs, which is the VA. Also, such care is free only for those veterans with a disability rating of at least 50%. There remains a significant number of veterans who are ineligible to receive free health care even after served in a theater of combat operations. And especially this bill addresses those with mental health issues. And one example is this. On average, the U.S. has, for their veterans, 17 suicides per day. Health care available to disabled veterans through the VA is considered a benefit and not an entitlement like it is for retired military service members. I have been told if this joint resolution passes, the federal government will never consider it. My response to that is we need to do the right thing here and be the model for all the other states. And if we get enough states on board this, it may force the hand of the federal government and they may act. Finally, this House Joint Resolution will show that the General Assembly believes in veterans who have served honorably, and the least the federal government can do is exchange for their devoted service to this country. Madam Chair, with your permission, I will open the floor to questions.
Do we have any questions? Seeing none, Are we ready? We're ready to vote. Call for question. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, no. Ayes have it.
Thank you,
Your
Madam
bill
Chair.
moves on.
Thank you, committee.
The remainder of the bills will be rolled until next week, and that ends our business for today, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.